Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the OMG MotoGP podcast with former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Hewitt and myself, Harry Benjamin. Please do make sure you've liked, subscribed and reviewed, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. It's much appreciated. And if you have a question, query or comment, we always love hearing from you. You can send us a 30-second voice note over email or just send us a normal email. It's omgmotogp@gmail.com. And it's race week ahead of the Catalan Grand Prix. The recording date is Monday, the 28th of August. And this week, we're very pleased to be joined by the MotoGP Technical Director, Danny Aldridge. Danny, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time during race week. When do you fly out there?
Tomorrow morning. I've got 11 o'clock flight out to Barcelona tomorrow. So today, just doing a little bit of work and speak to you guys and then off tomorrow.
Yeah, you look a little bit too relaxed for the start of the Catalunya round, I've got to say, for the moment, Danny. I mean, mind you, you are only 19 and you're struggling a bit. I can see that from here. The pressure.
Yeah, it's like most riders. We always lie about our age, don't we? We never tell the truth about our age. So, yes.
Hands up.
That's the idea. But, Yeah. I've
well,
seen
Keith
all the
turned
passports.
80 last week. Can you
You've
believe
seen
it?
all the passports.
Yeah,
That's
I know. Yeah, actually, he run me on his birthday. Yeah. I was very lucky that he ran me on his birthday. I feel very honoured.
I think what we need to do is go through really briefly your role and the way that the rules are made and the way that these are implemented and the timescales that go with them, if we can, just to get this one out of the way, because there will be a lot of people that's watching and listening that perhaps they hear about the technical director. We always complain about the rules. There's journalists that have their spats with you when you won't give them what they want or they can't see what they think they should be able to see. And all of this, you're sort of mired in the middle of it all, fencing from all sides.
Yeah.
It must be quite a difficult position to be in, but just give us a brief on what your role is in MotoGP and what power you have.
Honestly, my main power is just to control the current rules. What's in the yellow book now, basically, that's what my job is, to make sure everyone adheres to the technical side of it. Obviously, the rule book has the sporting side. Thankfully, that's nothing to do with me. But from the technical side, I just need to make sure all the teams, manufacturers apply it to the rules, really, like a policeman. Basically, I'm the police of the paddock.
Do you have any input into the rules themselves at any stage? I mean, do the teams, obviously the teams make the rules. Well, not obviously, but they do make the rules. I mean, is that a bone of contention as far as you're concerned? Does that crush any kind of development that you would like to see or that you would not like to see? I mean, we can be both ways. I mean, there can be some things that turn up that they've sanctioned that you would prefer not to have in MotoGP, perhaps.
We as the organisers can propose any rule change. We can do that. We can submit it to the GPC, which is the Grand Prix Commission, which is obviously IRTA, Dorna, FIM, and the MSMA, the manufacturers. And I can make proposals every week if I want to, but it has to be approved by all those parties. So the rules can be written by anyone. Any of those groups can propose a rule change. And then we have to go through that process of voting yes or no. From the technical side, any rule change, the manufacturers, the MSMA, must unanimously agree to that change. If it's little things, it's not so bad. Big things, they can take years to get through them, to be honest, because one manufacturer thinks, this rule change is actually not good for us because we have that little bit of advantage, so we will say no. And unless the MSMA or the 5 manufacturers now agree to it unanimously, it won't go through. The next big update is 27. I don't know if everybody knows this. It's normally 5-year periods of the main rules like engine capacity, fuel, everything like that. It's normally every 5 years. The next one is coming in 27. So we're talking now about the changes for 27. It's a long way away, but it soon comes up.
Let's talk about why and who will have instigated this unanimous situation, because of course when you got unanimous, you can't always make a unanimous decision. It crushes, almost you want a majority type situation to get rules through. Who actually made that up in the first place? Who was the instigator? Who was the rule maker of the rules?
This is going back, to be honest, before my time. It's part of the MSMA stature for quite a while, or with the agreement they have with the MSMA that the GPC will say, okay, we won't put anything through unless it's agreed by all manufacturers. manufacturers, and that's what they wanted. When this was introduced, I honestly don't know, Keith, because before I was technical director, so it's been that way for quite a while. We had it recently, with the some ride hire device, which was now obviously not allowed, but because it wasn't unanimous, we did it the following year, which was the agreement. So they had a 1 year grace where they could be used, and then obviously this year it's been banned, that side of it. But you always see it's very hard to get things pushed through, major things pushed through, if one manufacturer says no, and that tends to be the case, unfortunately, sadly, sometimes. They obviously look at what's better for them than their competitors, which is normal competition, I guess.
So what about the usual sort of catch-all damnation of Dorna? Dorna being the overarching promoters, the owners of the sport, effectively. I mean, they get accused of all sorts of things. They don't have any major input into the rules, other than suggestions, I would assume, like you, like IRTA, like the FIM. But they can't control the rules in any way.
No, not at all. No. There's a strict guidelines or rules we have to abide by. There's a GPC that all parties must agree to those rule changes. Yeah. So if it's a safety thing, there's two. If it's a safety thing, yes, then we can normally push it through without any problems. But if it's just a normal rule change, now we all have to agree.
What's the timescale on this kind of stuff? I mean, you've mentioned every 5 years. We've got the big stuff gets changed every 5 years. I mean, where's the cutoff point where the suggestion is made? Because obviously 5 years might be where it's instigated, but where is the period? Is it 4 years? Is it 3 years prior that they've got to get that suggestion in that engineering process into place?
It's normally about 3 years. So like I say, we're now, the manufacturers, and this is mainly Corrado's area because he's the director of technology, he's now talking to all the manufacturers about 27. So now we're talking in 23 about 27. So it's that period. It takes a long, long, long time, especially with the bikes. Is to change a bike, develop a bike is 2 or 3 years down the line. So they're talking about that now. So yeah, some things can actually happen really quickly if they all agree. If it's not a big change, like software and stuff like that, if they're happy, we can do it very quickly. Other things, aero, as we said, is a big issue. Engines and tires and everything like that, it does take a while, but it varies from case to case.
Interesting you mentioned tires there, because they seem to have their own set of rules for what they bring and do and don't do. I mean, and it is a major issue at the moment, and I want to get into that if I can, quite briefly, because it's quite boring, but it is such a major thing, and we hear so much contention about it. But are Michelin or whoever is the tyre supplier, do they have some autonomy? Are they able to do whatever they want to do because they think they should do it? Or do the manufacturers and you guys have some kind of say in that as well?
We have a say, but we have to rely on their expertise. They're the guys that make the tyres. They understand the tyres better than anybody. And let's be honest, they want to build the best tyre they can for the championship. And obviously because it's commercial reasons. So they're not going to build anything that's no good, because that gets out. It doesn't help them in the commercial side of things for selling tyres to the public. So he's down to Michelin, the official tyre supplier, but they're working very, very hard. I know that. And it's not an easy thing because, Keith, as a racer, the last thing that touches the tarmac is the tyre. So you could have the most powerful engine, and if the tyre is no good, they're always trying to keep up. And this is very hard for them to do that. And it's very easy, no disrespect to the riders, is to blame, it's the tyre, that's the problem. If they're having an issue or something like that. But I think I work obviously very closely with Mitchell, as we all do, and I think they do an amazing job for the championship. For me, I can't. The
last thing that touched the tarmac in my day was me.
Yeah,
usually elbow followed by backside followed by helmet. Okay. Joking aside, but it's the tyre manufacturer that could find themselves with making the restrictions to that wonderful dilemma that everyone has in the rule making department. Bikes are too fast now. They're going too quick into a corner. They're getting off the corners too quick. The tracks are getting smaller. Therefore, this must be a major headache that you guys are all having to try and get a set of rules in place where MotoGP bikes are not too fast for the tracks we go to. The other side to that coin is the bloody production bikes in World Superbikes. If you slow the MotoGP bikes down too much, they're going to be as slow as a modified production road bike. And that really can't happen in a prototype series.
No, this is the dilemma that obviously Dorna have and we have, because obviously Dorna have both championships, and it's trying to do the same in both championships. So yes, MotoGP should be the pinnacle; it should be the fastest. So if we can slow ours down, we need to slow World Superbikes down a little bit, because you said you don't want World Superbikes putting faster lap times than ours, because people like HRC come to this championship to develop. Otherwise, if we don't allow them to develop, they don't get the budget, and then they disappear from the championship. It's the same with all the manufacturers. So it's that fine line of keeping development at a reasonable pace that is not too dangerous. As you say, like we go to the tyres, is that to slow the bike down, yes, you can make the tyres a little bit harder, but then they're going to crash because they're pushing too hard. And it's the tyres' fault. It's not true. It's the bikes are getting quicker and the tyres are trying to catch up with that side of it. But I think we are looking at ways to make the bike slower safely, but not spoil the show. That's the biggest thing as well. It's just that balance.
While we're on the subject,
well, that's what Scott Smart said last week, didn't he? He said, we can slow things down, but that doesn't necessarily ruin the show, does it? Because at the end of the day, we want entertainment as well, and we want to see good wheel-to-wheel races. That doesn't have to be the fastest they could possibly go. That can actually ruin the show a little bit.
Well, I have a real problem with that, and I'm sure Danny will do as well, as we've been in it such a long time. I mean, Grand Prix should be, like you've already said, Danny, the pinnacle of what we're seeing, and slowing down everything. You slow down Grand Prix bikes, you slow down World Superbikes, you slow down BSB bikes or Moto America bikes, and that's almost like a fight to the bottom, which I struggle with a little bit. I have no clue or indication of how you can get over that problem, but it is a problem, and we will lose great racetracks in the not too. We just had BSB on at the weekend at Cadwell Park. I love Cadwell Park. You love Cadwell Park, Danny. I know that. It's what we all cut our teeth on. It's where I first met your dad, Dan, was Cadwell Park, in the Rodney, in Horncastle, in the pub.
That was a race day.
But you have a place like Cadwell Park. I mean, if you could have a Grand Prix at Cadwell Park, it would be absolutely mega. You're never going to have, because it's a goat track. And that's the problem is as motorcycle racing evolves, and especially when we're sharing tracks as well with Formula One to some extent, you've got that snag that comes on there too.
Well, have you seen these great big sort of things they've added at Jerez on the side of the sort of the curve? They're sort of really juttering out to try and stop track limits. Well, they're dangerous to one point.
They're big serrations that they. What you're talking about, like the crocodile teeth that are on the edge of the. Well, that's just to get the vibration going, and that from a bike point of view is a problem.
I think that
I think from a car point of view as well, it looks like a bit of a problem.
Because I think they originated in Mazzano. But I don't actually get involved in that side, but I believe they're called the Mazzano curve, and they're appearing more and more racetracks because the idea is obviously is that they look severe, shall we say, but the idea is obviously so you don't get an advantage of it. So if you go on, then you have to roll the throttle, you lose time. So and you don't have to worry about track limits, unfortunately. So it's hard. And I say, safety is the biggest thing. Is as Keith knows, in the old days, even look at, unfortunately, Cadwell, he's obviously, Stuart Hicks runs an amazing championship, and I was watching it yesterday. He looks so narrow to me, and there is no runoff whatsoever. It's either racetrack or grass. And what we're trying to do is, obviously, we've gone away from grass. But it's caused the other problem is that they're running off the track and getting more speed, unfortunately. So it's that fine line.
I'm interested to know, Danny, just on maybe more of a broader note. It's obviously the Catalan Grand Prix this weekend, and you said you're flying out tomorrow, and you're preparing, doing a bit of work today. What are you actually doing? What are you doing in the build up to flying out to a Grand Prix?
Just preparing everything. Obviously, just getting all the paperwork ready. Because a lot of it's mainly paperwork. To be honest with you, like. One of the things we do on Wednesday when I arrive is we have strangely enough, we talk about the MotoGP lottery, the tyre lottery. And it's always been it's quite funny. it was always that, how do we allocate tyres? And the championship now is so professional that they're always worried about every little thing. So we literally have the teams turn up on Wednesday, come into my office, and they pick their tyres. It's literally like that. They put the hand in the bag, they take a discount, and the tyres are pre-allocated. So there's no talk about someone getting special tyres or anything like that. So a lot of it's just paperwork, preparing stuff and answering emails, but and talking to people.
Glamorous.
I was going to say,
it's not a portrait.
Every time there's a problem, every time there's something going on, I'm on the phone to you, and I'm just the tiniest cog in your wheel. I can imagine that you're getting calls from teams and manufacturers all of the time, trying to float ideas through you. I mean, the manipulation of your position. I mean, do you find that there's kind of guys that have got an ulterior motive? They're all trying to just get that extra little, just trying to see if they can get something past you. Is that a regular occurrence?
That happens 24/7. To be honest, that's their job. That's what they're paid for. And I think I'm always trying to catch up games, trying to think what they're thinking, and all the time it's worse when they send you they email you, said, okay, what's your opinion on this? And you have to be very careful when you reply and stuff like that. But I'm working obviously not just MotoGP. Obviously, you have the same situation with Moto2, Moto3, Moto E. I'll be technical director for all 4 classes, so it's just not MotoGP. I'm busy through all the classes, but MotoGP is the one that you have to be a bit more awake, shall we say. And obviously, aero package now, they've only allowed 1 upgrade each, but that's 4 areas. So you see a lot of things change now. And for me, the worst thing is having rules, because rules open doors. It's a really strange thing to say. It's if you have a rule, they seem to find a way around it. The less rules you have, it's easy to control, strangely enough. So from that side of it.
You say you're like the policeman. Do you have a big enough team? Do you need a few more troops?
It would be helpful.
Are you volunteering?
Everybody would want more people. Yeah.
I'm definitely not volunteering for that job.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I'm a sort of the official technical driver championship, but obviously I have a lot of input from people, Corrado, Dorna, Erta, which we all talk. It's not only my decision. If something I'm not happy with, I'm not sure about, we will talk about it as a championship, and then then obviously from that communication, I will make my decision, whatever it be, sort of thing. But yeah.
Talking of not happy, I'm guessing that you wouldn't have been happy with some of the occasional press that you guys get. You had last year, Matt Oxley came up with the non story of the year. I felt anyway. There was a sheet of paper that while you were developing this new tire pressure guide or whatever it is, everybody was volunteering their information, their input with the systems that they were running at the time for measuring tire pressures, which has become a major issue since it's so critical to get it right. And then this year you're running this new software that presumably is now up and running and is working reasonably well. But sometimes you're accused of being a little bit too secretive.
Yes, I know recently there's been some reports about people being, so we say, manhandled out of technical, which unfortunately is not true. I have to respect the manufacturers. I have to make sure anything I do is kept secret. And even in technical control, at the end of the qualifying of the race, we would have a certain amount of bikes in that area, and I will carry out whatever I need to do. It could be, as you say, tire pressures, fuel capacity, of the weight, noise, data download. And to me, it's a secure area, and I don't allow any photography in there. And it's not hiding anything, it's that respect. For example, if we obviously, the capacity for MotoGP in the main race is 22 litres, and I regularly check the fuel capacity of the tanks just to make sure it's correct. Now, I would not allow anyone in that pit box because obviously the tank comes off, the bike is exposed. So what would happen was I would remove everybody from that pit box and carry out the test in a secure area. Now, I'm not hiding anything. It's just been, I think, the professional way of doing the job. And I know I spoke to Keith about this in the past. The gearboxes is a big thing, and the secrecy of the gearbox now. These seamless gearboxes is amazing. And even the normal mechanics in the teams don't see them. They literally be moved from the bike. They go into the engineer's truck of that manufacturer, and they worked on there. So if I was to do a check on that gearbox, it's done in their truck. It's not done in my technical. It's controlled because I'm there, but it's secret. And I have to respect that. And that's why I try to do in technical. I don't allow anyone to go in there. I don't allow photography. I'm sure they do in most championships. You would never see a camera inside technical at all.
I tell you what, we were talking the other week about buying talent as far as swapping mechanics and technicians from team to team. You remember when KTM came up, they sucked half of Repsol Honda out of the garage over to their side of things. Imagine how much Danny is worth with all the secrets you've got tucked away. Joking aside again, data downloads, you just touched on that just then. Out of all the things that we can physically see, touch and look at, data downloads, have you got access to all the information that you need, or would you like to have more of that to make the decisions that you make? And I'm moving towards more race direction, I suppose, here. Do they have the stewards and the like, do they have the kind of data downloading that they need to make the decisions that they make when it comes to a critical maneuver on track or whatever it might be?
Not live. We don't have that. I know if you take Formula One into this case, Formula One, I believe they get everything. Everything's live. All the data is streamed to the FIA straight away from the races. We don't have that. I can download anything at the end of the qualifier session or the race or any session. I can pull that bike in. I can download that data. It's in the rule book. I can analyze the information I need to check. After that, I have to delete it. I don't store any data on my laptop at all. So I do delete everything in front of the manufacturer, but I have the right to download any information as and when I need it under their presence, shall we say. So they're there. The strange thing is that obviously in the yellow book, it says only I'm allowed on my laptop to do this. A few years ago, about 7-8 years ago, I had to leave a Grand Prix, and on race day, no one could download the data because it was the laptop was only accessible by my finger, because it was a fingerprinted laptop that they needed my finger to actually open it, and no one could do that. So yes, it was a little bit like that.
That could have led to an awful situation.
You're going to cut your finger off and leave it.
Yeah.
Very Mission Impossible.
We're a little bit more, I would say, stricter. I think the manufacturers are a little bit more worried than, say, the FIA in Formula One. It's a case of, you're coming to this championship, we will take everything. Where we can download it, but I do not store anything.
What's the advantage?
What
can you see when you download stuff? What are you looking for in that instance?
It depends on what if it's the technical side, obviously we compare the software versions. We'll make sure that obviously we only allow a certain amount of software versions they can use. Obviously from that version they can make their calibration changes. The IMU, we can check the spec of the IMU, anything like that. Now obviously with the tire pressures, we are just starting to go live with that, and that's one of the only things we now get live, or we will have live, is the tire pressures. But from the software, I can download anything I want, but normally it's just a version of the software to make sure they've not made anything wrong.
Has Mal Oxley got a direct line into your tire software?
No one has.
Hope you're listed, Oxo. Hope you're listed.
No, I say I always try to be open with any journalist or anything like that. So I'm always happy to tell him what I can. Legally,
it is a problem, isn't it? Because we've got some. I'm taking the mickey out of Matt Oxley, of course, because I've known him since he was a boy, virtually. But Oxo is one of the best journalists there are in the paddock. But he does tend to, like many journalists, spin off in a particular tangent if he's got a bone between his teeth. But it's kind of like, we're lucky in motorcycle racing that we've got some really good, dedicated journalists that are forever trying to get that information out. I know they're all friendly in the paddock. Everybody gets on in pretty much in the paddock. There are one or two that don't, but mostly they do. I mean, but it's almost at conflict with you because they have to try and find out. And basically, I'll include us in this, we're constantly there to try and drop you in it.
Yes,
it's our job.
Yeah. I actually had one journalist. It's part of the job. I understand. In the day, a journalist is to sell their stories, and let's be honest, bad stories sell better than good stories. I had the conversation with a journalist on the grid the other day, again about his tire pressures, and she said, "Oh, why don't you tell us the tire pressures are okay?" I said, "Well, I'm sure that means nothing to you. I will make a report on anything to the FIM stewards if something is wrong. I don't make a report everything is okay. It's only if there's a problem. Now, if every week I did a press relief, unbelievable, great news, tire pressures are good. You get bored with that. You want to know when someone has a problem, not when someone's okay. This is normal."
So when someone does have a problem, or you spot a problem, or you think there might be an issue with something, whether that's error related or whatever it is to do with the bike, what are the steps that you take to then find out, to identify that problem? Say you're not happy with one of the bike's ride height devices or something of that ilk. What do you do? What are the steps you do to solve that problem or to find out?
Well, I don't need. It's not a case of solving it. If a bike would come into technical control, if you take the ride height device, and if I find it's something that's not legal within the wording of the rule book, I would then basically impound that part. So the bike or the part of the bike, if necessary, I would then make a report to the FIM stewards on my findings, and then pass that over to the FIM stewards. And obviously, there would be a hearing. And obviously the team or manufacturer can obviously be present at hearing, and they would make their decision from that. There's obviously, that's that side when I find something, but there's also the side is if a team manufacturer make a protest. If they protest someone, then obviously I would do the same thing, basically make my report on the part they're protesting, and then would give my opinion if it's legal or not, and pass that over to the FIM steward. So I would literally just make a report. That's all right.
Interesting that I'm interested to know whether the manufacturers actually fall out personally over some of these things. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Aprilia situation with the and Yamaha when Gigi had got the scoop, the first of the rear wheel aero situation going back a couple of years now, and everyone was unhappy about it. I mean, the daft thing about it was Yamaha really kicked that off because they had one there that was a rain deflector, if I remember rightly, first. I think they had the first scoop, and then along comes Gigi and thinks, we can make a bit of aero out of this. And how did you handle that? Because it was such a grey area at the time. Did you have to tighten the whole rule book up after that? Was it a case of all of a sudden you really had to start thinking out of the box a little bit to make it work?
Well, that's why when the rules changed, the aero rules changed after that period, because then it used to be the aero package was literally the fender and the main aero body. Now we have area A, which is basically where the scoop is, and others, which are the fork area. If you can see, like the Aprilia now and Ducati have these fork side pods on, and they're governed under other. But then if you look at the rear seats, you see like some of these have like these dragon fins on the back of the rear seat. And again, when we started writing the aero rules few years ago with Corrado, we spoke all about the rear seat. We said, and we made a sort of a dimensional area where anything in that we don't control. We didn't think it was to be an issue. And how wrong were we? So they obviously now started to add things to the back seat. So it's just they're being very clever. Like with the scoop, as you say, it was a big story many, many years ago with this, and interpretation of was it aero or was it cooling the tires, and honestly it was probably a little bit of both, because later on, a few years down the line, I had a couple of manufacturers come into my office where they were using them. So, and it was when they were homologated, so they couldn't take them off. There's part of the rules where if you had them, you had to keep them on. And they said to me, we have a problem for safety. They're cooling our tire too much. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. 2 years ago, you were saying they're not cooling tires, and now you want to remove them because you say so.
What about? I mean, aero is always going to be contentious. I mean, like I think Scott Smart's diagnosis of the aero problem was: is if it's got a fare in its aero, that's all there is to it. was the way he looked at it.
Yeah.
So moving that to the nth degree, do you control clothing, helmets? Because obviously they can become aero in some way, shape, or form. I mean, we've seen it in the cars with the whatever that was, the aero hole in the bodywork that they could use a glove to block it, and it gives it more downforce or something. I mean, do you control clothing as well?
We do actually. We made a rule a couple of years ago, I think it's last year actually, that they can't have aero parts on the leathers, gloves, or boots. The only thing we don't have it on, strange enough, is the helmet, because at the time, obviously they have the scoop at the back already. So a lot of them have that. So and the helmets now have to be FIM approved, and that goes through a laboratory in Aragon where they test it. But I don't even notice, even now, Alpine Stars have actually got a little bit of on the side of their ones, they have like a little skink there, and that's a new thing. But we do govern, obviously, the boots, gloves, and suits, but not helmet. Yeah.
You said at the start, all of this is obviously you're monitoring the current situation, but then you're looking ahead as well to the next big changes, which you said was 2027, right? So what could you tell us? What are we going to see in 2027? I know it's a bit ahead, but I want to know.
I can't tell you.
It's worth a shot. Can you not say anything?
You might as well have asked me that question, Harry.
Yeah. I honestly, it wouldn't be correct me to say what we're looking at everything and I'm talking about from engines to aero body to the whole package of the bike. So it's not one specific area. They want to tighten everything up. And I honestly, nothing's been agreed, and I wouldn't want to say something to upset anybody. So it's been discussed, but yeah.
I tell you, it's quite interesting, and something that brought it into sharp focus for me this week, Danny, and I know that you'll be across this as well. Cito Pons, he's finally packing it in after 42 odd years, double world champion back on 250s back in the early 80s, in fact, late 80s. I mean, what teams have gone through, the evolution of the teams from the 80s when we all thought we knew what we were on about to where we are now is slightly scary. Do you think, when you look around the paddock, I mean, you're just, what are you now? You're just about in your 50s, I think, aren't you, Danny? I mean, and you've seen a lot, but there are a lot of guys.
Yes.
There are a lot of guys that are in the paddock that are kind of my age. I'm a generation, maybe two further on, and there's going to be a lot at some stage in the not too distant future. That paddock is going to have a big shift. It's going to be because most of the older guys are going to be moving out of there. Is there from where you're looking? Is there a real new breed of males, females, technicians, youngsters coming through that you can see from where your point is?
Oh, definitely. Now, what you tend to see is, from no respect to you, Keith, unfortunately, in your days, you didn't have data technicians. There was no data. So it was basically the mechanic came up and obviously become the crew chief. Now, what you tend to find is a lot of the data guys and young guys, and I'm talking male or females, there's some very good data females in the paddock doing a great job. And they're the ones that tend to become their crew chiefs because they understand the setup of the bike a lot more. And this is what we say is the young blood that's moving up. The more experienced crew chiefs have been there for many years. And when they do tend to retire or whatever, and a crew chief comes up, it tends to be the data guy. And they're the brains of the outfit now.
Where are these guys coming from? Are they coming from the lower categories that like CEV, CIV, stuff like that? Or are they coming from school, from university, and they're taking it as a vocation?
I think a little bit of both, really. You get a lot of guys also coming from people like the ECU manufacturers coming now. Obviously, we have Morelli, we have Delauto, and quite a few of Morelli guys have moved over to teams and so forth from that side of it. So it's made a lot of them come from university, move into a team as a data technician, and move up from there.
What about insider trading? What about this, the business where, as again, we dealt with Scott Smart on this one, these guys have a value because they've been in a team and they've learned quite a lot. Is there, and I suggested that maybe, contracts are tightened up a bit now for personnel as well, so they can't just keep jumping ship and taking the ideas of one manufacturer to another manufacturer. I mean, have you got levels of security within a manufacturer now to try and negate any of that information drifting across into another manufacturer's domain?
I honestly don't know. I don't get involved with the staff of the manufacturers. I don't know what their contracts are or anything like that. So I'm sure they do. I'm sure they move across. You've got obviously Ken, who was the technical director of Suzuki, moved over to Honda. So there's obviously they do poach people, shall we say? But I don't know if they have to. What information they can take across, I don't.
Are you still able to be a fan, Danny, of MotoGP?
I was never a fan. No, yes.
Because
yes,
obviously, when it becomes your job and the nature of your role, I imagine it can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, you have to be a fan. You have to be passionate about the job. But what you can't be is you can't be a super fan. You can't be in awe of anybody, anything like this. To me, everybody's treated the same. This is the most important thing. I enjoy what I do. I have a passion for it. But if a rider walks past me, I'm not like teary-eyed or anything like that. I don't think that's not good for you. I treat the Moto3 riders with the same as I treat a MotoGP rider. And the same with the teams as well. Most of my dealers are with the teams anyway, teams and the manufacturers. Yeah. So I treat everybody the same, equal, which you have to.
I only get teary-eyed when Keith walks past.
That's because he's had to buy me a beer.
Yes.
And I must apologise for my throat because too many beers last night.
Yeah, Keith was partying late last night, wasn't he? Mean, with as you know, obviously with your job and being a fan, obviously, what have you made of MotoGP this year so far? It's been quite a good season, interesting season to watch. Obviously, Ducati have kind of dominated a little bit with Pecco Bagnaia, but we've got the sprint races being introduced. How have you found all of that? And of course, Marc Marquez and his future, all up in the air right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange year this year with the way the champion's going. The sprint races, obviously, is a lot more work for us, but that's a different subject. But I think it's good I think they've actually done a very good job with them. I think for the fans at the circuit, it's great to have that race on a Saturday. There's always a concern. It's going to be interesting to see how they pan out now because literally, I looked at the calendar. We're the 28th of August, and we're only halfway through the season, and that is quite a scary thing. We do have 10 races to go in, I think, about 14 weeks, so it's a very tight thing. So how the people can manage the next 10 races with a sprint and a race and back-to-backs, triple headers and so forth will be interesting. But it's been a real strange season with the way the races are panned out, and there's definitely been a difference between the sprint results and the lay races. And I think that's down to tyres to be a little bit. I think the KTMs can run the softer tyre a little bit better in the sprint races. But I was looking at the other day the results. I was on pit wall and I saw, looking at Marquez, I know this is a big story, unfortunately, and I thought he was down in about 16th place at the time. I thought, this is not what they want to be. But he's still less than a second. And this is the big thing to me, less than a second. And I think a caption come up, I think top 20 within a second, which is amazing for a championship. Amazing. But
I've argued for some time that we're going to be moving to 4 decimal places soon in timing. I mean, if you want to really take the P, young Harry, here's the way to do it. We only used to time to a 10th back in the day. Then it went to 100th. Then it went to 1,000th. And we're soon going to be going to a 4th decimal place. I'm absolutely bloody sure of that because we're even getting 2 and 3 riders to 3 decimal places on equal times occasionally. Yeah.
It's say that people say that the bikes are not easy I think the bikes are easier to ride with the new aero. I know this is a bone of contention with the aero, is that I think someone who's coming up can get on that bike a lot quicker than they did a few years ago. And it makes it easier to go faster. I was speaking to Loris Capirossi recently, and he went on one of the bikes in Mugello, I think it was last year, and he said it was just so much easier to ride the aero now. He felt safer on it, strangely enough, because it just stuck to the ground. It was not wobbling. He was not out of control. He could just ride it hard.
Because of the way things have gone here, Danny, I mean, we're moving into the domain of sensors and the like around the tracks to try and make sure that we use those as a limiter, if you like, to where you can go on the track. And most of that, for me, has been down to the fact that across all these different platforms, we're doing almost exactly the same time. So therefore, to give anybody an advantage by running out in the paint or doing whatever they're doing to grab a tiny bit of an extra advantage needs to be negated through the rules. I mean, how much of a headache is that becoming? I mean, how much extra are Dorna having to provide for people to monitor that, to try and give the stewards, the race direction and the like, that the information that they need to keep control of these almost out of control technical track limit type rules?
I would say this is, not my department, but I know working with probably Mike Webb, Graham Webber, and the guys in race control and certain things. The work that Dorna doing is amazing. They're probably there today, laying this cabling on the track limits to make sure it's all correct, setting up the cameras, and this has all come about correctly from the safety side of it. Now, I say, going back to the old days, and you take Catalan's example, is that it used to be track grass. There was no runoff. And we're trying to make these tracks safer, so we give more runoff, and it allows the bike to go wide safely. And then obviously they think, hang on, this is the fastest way around this corner by doing this. So this is why they run this. We've gone from, it used to be, it's fibre optic now, I believe. I say I don't get hold of it, but it's literally you touch it and it will send a signal and you are off track limits. And we need it, unfortunately. It's just the way it has to go. But these new curbs that you were talking about, I'm sure they're called the Mazzano curbs. I could be wrong, but they're a lot more. If you go on them, they're safe, but you know you're on them, and you can't keep the throttle on like that.
Yeah, I've come across those. Obviously, that they were the form of safety limit in the past. But I mean, as soon as you get those crocodile teeth type serrated curves, you lose traction.
Yeah.
You try and tap the throttle in across something like that, and you've got no grip at all, and it pings you through the limiters or whatever you might have there, and into the sky. I'm not sure I like crocodile curves or Mazzano curves or whatever you want to call them, to be frank with you. I think we've had them before. If we're going to go back to that, I think I prefer grass.
Yeah. The problem is we're using more and more tracks to say, this is slightly out of my area of work, but we use a lot more tracks than Formula One are, and we've got to have that crossover period where the tracks are the same, because to go to say somewhere and say, okay, you got to have these curbs, and then Formula One go back and you got to have these curbs, it's not so easy for them to do. So trying to find a compromise that's safe for us and acceptable for Formula One. And I know that Tom now from Dorna, he works very closely with the FIA to have some sort of crossover between these championships.
Well, I mean, this has been a fascinating chat, just to find out a little bit more about the insight of what you do and your thoughts of things. Obviously, it is the Catalan Grand Prix this weekend, and we are going to be doing a little our extra 15-minute update with a proper preview before the weekend. But there is a little bit of news, isn't there, Keith, going into this weekend that literally broke today. And unfortunately, it's Alex Rins.
Alex Rins, who was scheduled to be riding back again this weekend. He's Calalunya is going to be in for him again this weekend. So sad news from that point of view. I mean, not unexpected, I've got to say, considering. But the sad news for me, I touched on it a moment ago, is Sito Pons, backing out of, eventually out of the team. I mean, Sito Pons, when you look at the people that he's gone through, and even go Harry, I'll give you one here. Sito Pons, the Formula Renault, he used to sponsor a Formula Renault. He had a Formula Renault team in Spain, and Heikki Kovalainen came through him, if you want to go back to the four-wheel stuff. So Sito Pons was a double world champion at 250, which is the Moto 2 equivalent back in the day. Very, very fast young man at the time. And then he ran 500 Grand Prix, some really, really big names. Caparossi, you mentioned Caparossi earlier. He came through Cito Ponds back in the day as well. And Caparossi now is a major part of the infrastructure, if you like, at MotoGP. Well, I actually made a quick look. Barros, Biaggi, Bayliss. And I think going through Moto2, didn't Quartararo, I think, came through Cito as well at some stage. So we're talking about a man that spent 42, 43 years of his 63 years life in the paddock. He's had his trials and tribulations. There was the big tax scandal thing that's probably still going on in Spain. Who the hell knows? It goes on forever, doesn't it? Where he was had the tax authorities had a little nibble at him as well. But Cito Ponds for me is part of infrastructure, and I suppose it comes back into what I said a little bit earlier on. At some stage, these older guys are going to roll over, and Cito is a big name that won't be with us anymore after this year.
He'll be, for me, he's a big loss in the paddock. Cito has always run one of the most professional teams I've worked with. The guys he's had, and he's always had the same guys. I always think that's a nice thing to see. He has the same guys working year on, year on. So obviously, let's be honest, that means he's paying the wages. The team, as I have been, the mechanics, they do a good job. He's had some real good guys in it. I'm sure he won the championship with Paul Espargaro at Moto2. One member is any good.
Did.
I don't know if anyone can correct that. And he's not always had the biggest budget. And I know that for a fact. He's not had the biggest budget, but he's always been professional. The setup, the team, the bikes are always immaculate. So he's going to be a loss. Love him or hate Cito, he's a character, and his character's going to be missed, unfortunately.
One of my earliest memories of Cito is when he used to chase my girlfriend around the paddock. He didn't know she was my girlfriend at the time. And that happened to be...
And then he did find out.
That happens to be the mother of my oldest daughter.
Then he...
So we all have a memory about Cito, that's for sure. He's going to be a big loss, I think, to the paddock, from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, as I say, he's always
been...
He's run some good teams, as you know, from the days of the West, Honda, Camel, obviously, and then obviously recently he's Moto2 team and everything like that. He's definitely one of the most professional teams, I think, especially in Moto2 at the moment, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's certainly be interesting to see as well what the atmosphere is like in the paddock this weekend. And you'll know, Keith, because you're also going out there, aren't you?
Oh,
when do you fly?
Yeah, sorry, Danny, you don't get away with it that easily.
Danny, a look of shock there from Danny.
I will be putting the feet up on your desk in the office to try and get some extra tea.
Okay.
Just that my wife had booked a holiday for Barcelona, and neither of us realised that the Spanish Grand Prix was on at the same time.
Yes,
so I'm very happy to.
Strangely,
I'll be seeing you on Friday.
Okay. No. Do you know where my office is?
Get some inside scoops then.
No good moving it. I'll find it.
Bring your deck chair, Keith, and sit out on the IRTA deck, and you can spot all the dealings going on in the back of the garages. We'll be back on Thursday for a little extra hit of MotoGP news, and looking forward to the weekend proper with the latest rider movements and news, and see how Keith got on with his travels to Barcelona. But so make sure you're tuned in to the OMG MotoGP socials and the YouTube for all the latest of all of our podcasts. And if you're an audio-only listener as well, just make sure you're subscribed, and you can leave us a little 5-star review and write something positive down. It's always appreciated. Questions, queries, comments, always welcome. The email address is omgmotogp@gmail.com. Danny Aldridge, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been so insightful hearing about a little bit more about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and your views on the future of MotoGP and the now and the current day. We'll have to get you back on a little later on in the year if you're up for it.
Yeah, be good.
Good. Cornered him live on air. There we go.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I look forward
Everyone
to it.
heard it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Danny. Well, look, we shall see you for OMG Extra on Thursday this week. But for now, from me, Harry Benjamin, from Keith Ewan, and from Danny Aldridge, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.